Hey guys, Sam here with Scrappy Industries. I'm working on my dresser, TD15C, getting it ready to go to Brownsville Steam Show. I was having a problem the last job I had this machine out on. The right steering clutch was slipping occasionally, and it seemed like it was almost related to pulling the left steering clutch. The right one would want to jump back, but there's no mechanical connection between those two sides. So I started tearing into it, doing a major adjustment. There's all kind of turnbuckles and everything in these machines for the way the clutch and brake work. But I got through all those adjustments, didn't help. I realized even just starting it, that right steering clutch jumps back. So it leads me to believe we're having a problem with the booster, the external booster cylinder. So looking at the manual, doesn't look like a big deal to tear that off and tear it apart. So let's get into it, see what we find. So here's what it does. Basically, you can tell there's two steering clutches. Each one of them has a booster on it, but when you start it, we got this issue. I shouldn't do that. I have the adjustment on the booster band all the way backed out. Well, I shouldn't say all the way backed out, but way backed out. That's this guy. I wasn't even pulling on it. It doesn't seem to matter where you put that thing. And the other side doesn't do that. So there's sort of like a valving setup of how this thing automatically pulls on it inside of the little cylinder. So I'm gonna pull that off and take it apart. All right, the booster's torn out of there. Really wasn't any big deal. There's this, that's the pressure line from the front. I ended up having to use a fitting so that I could cap it. That's the crossover to the left steering clutch booster, and then there's a drain line goes back in. I threw a little plastic plug in there because it is a little dusty in there already. That's what the booster assembly looks like. It's just a little hydraulic cylinder. As you pull on the hand clutch, this comes up, and that's basically telling it to help you out, help you along. I believe the international, like a 1066 clutch booster, they work pretty similar to this, what I recall. I think it like moved beside it or something, and it pushed, there's like a nubbins inside of the rod. I don't know. I was looking at the parts book and it showed some of that. Well, looking a little cleaner now. Got that guy all polished up. Let's take it apart. So this is our booster cylinder. Trying to contain any oil that's still trapped in this thing. So the first step with this booster cylinder is to take the snap ring out that holds the gland in. Come on. She was starting to. There we go. Alrighty. Snap ring's out. There it is. I don't want to get this all dirty, so I'm going to keep it up out of this dirty pan for the time being. Then there's this valve. Oh, there's our problem. That spring's broken. That goes in like that, but yeah, that's why I would say that spring being broken in half is definitely making this thing act a little bit funny. So after a little further investigation, I think I have a better handle on what's actually happening here to explain this. When the machine, when you have the steering clutches out, normal, going straight, the rod is out, it's extended all the way. When you start pulling on a steering clutch, the lever on the back of this, you're pulling it forward, which there's a fork inside of this thing. There's a fork back in the back of the tube. And what that does is it pulls on this valve spool. The oil is always coming in here. There's basically, I think it's the 300 PSI of the lube pump coming in the side of this thing. So under normal circumstances, you want to go straight. The rod's all the way out. This thing is forward, and that's where the spring pushes on this spool, keeps it forward. The oil is in here between these two sets of piston rings. So the pressure can go through this hole and it's blocked. So nothing is happening with this right now. The spring tension of the steering clutches will keep this forward. When you want to steer, when you pull the steering clutch back, that fork that's in the tube, it pulls backwards on this spool. And what that does is connects this port here to the port at the front of the piston and gives the oil pressure up here, which pulls this backwards. As soon as it catches up to the spool, because you can imagine this part's traveling back, but because you pulled the steering clutch back to wherever you want it, if you're just trying to steer lightly or get into the brake, it catches it and it basically hovers the spool inside the piston, and wherever you hold it, that's where this will stay. So then when you let off, this shoves forward, which dumps the oil. The way the valving in this spool works, when this is all the way forward, the hole here in the front is connected to the back, and the oil dumps, comes to the back side where the drain is on the back of the tube and allows this to go forward. The problem we had going on was the spring was busted. What we found the problem was. So the spool, because there's those forks here, it would hit the forks and everything, but it could kind of float backwards, meaning the booster thought we were wanting to go when we actually weren't. So that's why when you saw earlier when I started the machine, steering clutch jumped back because the booster was pulling back until the fork is what was actually stopping this and the spring wasn't doing its job. With that all being said, I think the easiest course of action is to measure the spring up. We have all the pieces, I think they're all trapped in there. We know that the length is this and this one extra piece. This outer diameter fits into a bore in the back, you can see with the lights. So there's a little bit of leeway, but basically I'm just gonna try to measure this with calipers and see if McMaster Car has anything close. I bet they do. I also don't think it has to be anything super critical. As long as it's keeping that spool piece jammed forward when we want it to be, that's all it has to do. It's not balancing anything. I'm gonna see if I can find a spring and get it ordered, and then we'll put this tractor back together. We got us some new springs from good old McMaster Car, my favorite hardware store on the planet. I was just gonna hit the inside of this with the little flap wheel, just clean that up a little bit. Hopefully, I haven't verified any of this yet. Hopefully this spring fits, because it is a touch bigger OD than the old one was. Maybe we're gonna go with the spring we had after all. This spring we had over in the parts bin, but it's just not as strong as I would love it to be, but it actually fits in that hole the proper way. Perfect, what could go wrong? I don't like that either. It's just like the most specific thing you need here. We might be taking this side cover off after all. Seam right there. Yeah. Wedged on the fork. That's on the valve spool. That lets off. That spring is more than pushing that valve spool back. I would call that a win. Gland needs to go down so we can get the snap ring in there. There she be. The snap ring, the ears are just slightly too big on it seems like. It's gonna come launching out of here. If only we had a vise. All right, so that's all the way out. When we pull this, those forks are pulling back on that inner valve spool. That activates the booster to pull in from the pressure coming through here when that happens. And that follows it back. And you let off, it goes all the way out. This eye goes on there, and it was very adamant in the book about having 13.5 inches center to center with this thing all the way out. So lengthen it a fuzz. Looks like a bingo to me. They love 5/8 on this tractor for some reason. I mean, they're 7/16 bolts. Beauty Clark. She's back together. Ready for the tractor. There's the pressure hose coming in, and then the crossover to the other side. We got our pin here. And of course, this is the booster linkage, and I just set it right now with these lined up. We'll start it up and see if that worked at all. Put a new cotter pin in each of these pins. And that's really all there is to it. Let's see what she does. Remember before how that right steering clutch would jump back when you start it. Need more booster adjustment. Well, it appears we need to turn that turnbuckle in just a little bit and help that booster out so we can pull the clutch back. Go ahead and do that now. Pull that cotter pin out. Pull that pin. And let's just give that a half turn. Actually, it wasn't even trying, so I'll give it a full turn. Let's try it. Round two. Doesn't want to go. Seems weird, like we lost all the free play out of that turnbuckle adjustment. See how this one has that little bit of free play. So I think that's a result of adjusting that booster to 13.5 inches. If it wasn't there, I should have measured it and I didn't. If it wasn't at 13.5 inches before, when we set this turnbuckle for the free play here, that would have messed with that. So I'm gonna pull the battery back out of this side and get down to that turnbuckle, back it off so we get our correct free play back, and maybe that'll be enough to engage the booster. So after turning that turnbuckle out a little bit, let's see what we got. Oh boy. I think we need to adjust the booster out a little bit. This is the free play I had to adjust those turnbuckles for. I think what that does is give the booster a chance to get ahead. This seems to be as good as she's gonna get. It's still staying forward like it should. I'm happy with that. All in all, I think we're ready to roll. I'm gonna put the seat back in, put this side cover back on, and then there's that mesh piece over there. Tucks in under the seat, and I think I might get a truck ready to roll. Hopefully we can haul her to Brownsville tomorrow or Thursday. Night shift. Too heavy. Last piece of the puzzle coming at you. Finally ready to roll. Let's see if she'll steer. I realize there's tools on the track. Well, it all seems to work properly, so I think that's a wrap on the steering clutch. Give her a good workout at the show this weekend and see if it actually fixed it. I feel pretty confident that broken spring was all the issue we had, so good to find something that was such a simple fix. If you guys are interested in all this old equipment, trucks, tractors, construction equipment, anything of the like, be sure to check out the National Pike Steam Gas and Horse Association. Their fall show is this weekend, the 11th, 12th, and 13th. It is near Brownsville, Pennsylvania. We are in the Pittsburgh area, but definitely be sure to stop by, check it out. I'll be around. I have my 22B, the 977 I just bought. I took it up there last night, and the Lorraine shovel. So I'll be on somewhere bouncing around them. Definitely stop by, check it out. All kind of equipment. It's the largest antique equipment digging show in the United States, so something there for everybody. Look forward to seeing you guys there. Stop and say hi. So thanks for watching.